list. And so that's what I did. I could have been pulling records until next week and not had all the cool drummers. But what I thought I would do is just throw out a few names that are on my list, and then I sort of circled the maybe my top 5, but I don't want to tip my hand. So, and just to make sure Tony Clem gets his wish, I did include Zia and Seaweed that have played for Osric Tentacles, but they've had a kind of a revolving door at most of their positions, including keyboards. But anyway, I don't know. Let's see. Let me throw out some names, and if something strikes you, then let's stop and talk about them. But of course, my first page includes Neil Peart, Carl Palmer, Tommy Aldrich, our friend Bobby Rock, who played in Vinnie Vincent Invasion and now plays with Lita Ford. He's played with Alice Cooper, Rare Earth, some other bands. My friend from here in town, John O'Garrett, for a multitude of reasons. Brian Fajardo, who's also from local, Pete Sandoval, and Paul Bostoff. That was my first page. And I've got 4 other pages. Any of those names strike fear in the heart of anybody?
I mean, you can't go wrong with Bostoff. He's played in 37 different metal bands.
Yeah.
You know.
Is he back in is he back in Forbidden now?
I'm not sure where he's playing at now.
Because I heard some new live recordings with the new vocalist for Forbidden, and man, it sounds like Forbidden Evil from 1988, 87, 88. It's pretty impressive.
Let's see.
Oh, your first page is not unlike mine. I put Les Binks.
Okay, well, I had him on one of my pages too.
I think he's probably the most underrated drummer in Spin and Judas Priest. His drum work on all those albums was spectacular, in my opinion. How about Brian Downey?
Thin Lizzy? Didn't have him, but I can't argue against him.
I only went metal. I haven't had most of these guys yet.
Not a whole lot of drummers were doing steady double bass back in the 70s like Brian Downey was.
Yeah, that's why I included Tommy Aldrich, because he was kind of doing some of that stuff too.
Yeah, I have Tommy Aldrich on my list, but that guy was in so many different bands. Pat Travers and Ozzy and Whitesnake and Ted Nugent and Black Oak Arkansas
and he's
House
still
of
great.
Lords.
Yeah,
House of Lords. So,
and he still can bring it with both barrels.
How about this one? See if this one throws anybody for a loop. Terry Bozzio.
Got him on a list. I think he's super impressive. He's spectacular. Plays the largest kit I've ever seen.
And I got a few I thought I'd mention just to see what you guys thought. How about Peter Criss?
Yep.
I mean, I know Peter Criss is slow and older now and doesn't play like he used to, but back in the early 70s, he was pretty badass.
I thought he was.
This is a funny one because I feel the same way about him that I feel about Ace. I love both of them for what they did, but neither of them is my favorite player in that band.
Because I wrote down next Eric Carr. I thought was a better drummer.
Eric Carr. I think Eric Carr is the best drummer Kiss has had. I like Eric Singer too. Don't get me wrong. I can't think of his name right now.
Eric Singer, Eric Carr, Peter Criss.
No.
I don't know. The thing about Peter Criss is I just don't think he got any better. He's kind of stayed the same, and I think
he also wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't a metal drummer.
No, he was not.
And he said he was more of a jazz drummer, but he's not really a jazz drummer either.
No,
he was very influenced by Gene Krupa, though, right?
Yes,
he says that, but he can't play like Gene Krupa.
No,
I think he was just kind of a good rock drummer, and he just kind of fell in the right place at the right time, type of deal, you know.
But if you listen to his drum solo on Alive, it's actually pretty damn good.
Fraser Dawson wants to know what's going on. Hey, Fraser, we're talking about our favorite drummer.
How about I got 2 more, and then we'll move on to somebody else. But I'm still kind of in the 70s, early 80s. But how about Phil Collins?
Yeah, he was great.
Man, if I didn't agree with that, the Queen would take me out and flog me.
He was not only was he a great drummer, he was very innovative and creative. Listen to the third Peter Gabriel album, which Phil Collins played all the drums on it without using any cymbals. So because of that, Peter Chris, Peter
Phil-
Gabriel didn't want the cymbals. He kind of created that cavernous drum sound that you
Yeah.
hear on later Genesis and especially on Phil Collins solo stuff. So I always thought Phil was a vastly underrated drummer. I mean, he became the face of the band and the singer, but he was a great drummer back in those.
I just
days
don't
when they
think
were-
people realize, people that grew up that are our age didn't really know him as a drummer. You know, most people knew him more as a singer because that's when they got really big. You know,
Right.
even
Yeah,
though he was
exactly.
playing drums in the studio on most of the stuff that he did later with Genesis and his solo album. You know, but they think of him as the singer, not the drummer.
Yep,
So
that's true.
I took a different approach. I stuck straight metal, and because I was a drummer in a metal band, mine's real heavy on the guys that really influenced me to play. So I did a top 10, but a couple honorable mentions. The very first song that I learned was Motley Crue. What was it? It was "Shout at the Devil," and so Tommy Lee is kind of an honorable mention. He was one of the guys that really made me want to play drums. And then Charlie Benante is another kind of honorable mention there. He probably would make a lot of people's top 10 list. He got edged out for me. But the first few on my list, at 10, I had Bill Ward, you know, one of the most important drummers in metal. And when you go back and listen to those first 4 albums, he doesn't get a lot of credit for him. He doesn't get a lot of credit for how good he is. I'll just leave it at that. Number 9, one of my all-time favorite drummers to see. The guy is as good, if not better, live than he was on vinyl. Is Nick Menza, the late Nick Menza.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Who actually, he died on stage, didn't he? Didn't he have a heart attack during a show?
I do believe you're right.
And then number 8, I didn't get into him until years later, but man, he blew me away, and I've kind of lost interest in the band because I think they just kind of sound the same now. But it's Tomas, is it Heike, from Meshuggah?
Oh,
Those first few Meshuggah bands were otherworldly to me when I heard them, and I was blown away by how spot on his drums were.
Well, they were using acoustic drums still, and not so many of the electronic drums.
Yeah. So that's the first few on my list there.
Yeah, I can't argue that the Bill Ward thing. I've got him on. Well, in fact, my second page is Buddy Rich, who is a traditional jazz drummer, but I think he did things that a lot of metal guys like the speed pedal and just the hand speed. And
people don't realize a good portion of what's known as metal drumming now came from jazz.
Yeah,
the double bass came from jazz. The blast beats came from jazz. I mean, there's just so much that we consider metal now that came from 60s jazz.
Well, like Billy Cobham was doing double bass back in the early 70s.
Billy Cobham's debut album with, oh my God, who's on guitar on that one?
Al Di Meola?
No. Played for Deep Purple, Moxie. Bolin.
Oh, Chris Poland.
No, Tommy Bolin.
Oh, Tommy Bolin.
Yeah, that album is a 10 out of 10. Definitely worth checking out. It just got a reissue this year that's really good. But yeah, his first album is fantastic.
Well, in that same vein, I had Lenny White from Chick Corea, Return to Forever. He was doing a lot of speed pedal stuff. Mitch Mitchell from Hendrix.
Yeah,
his playing was heavy. Ian Pace. It took me about 3 months to realize he was playing left-handed because I couldn't figure out his patterns and whatever because everything was backwards. I would be remiss if I left off John Bonham. Not the fastest guy, but wasn't he? He was pretty fast, and he does things that even, in fact, Henry Vasquez, his close friend, lives here in town, and his playing reminds me a lot of John Bonham. But in that time of dying, that one breakdown part, even Henry has a hard time figuring out what that is he's actually doing. And we don't know if it's double tracked or Bonham is just that good. And then,
and you would see him do stuff on like a 5 and 6 piece kit that I wasn't able to figure out on a 9-piece kit that I was
Right.
playing. I mean, it's amazing how good he was and how small the kit was that he played.
Well, he used the rim shot to add a different sound to the toms and so forth. But anyway, and then I had Gene Hoglan and Dave Lombardo. Gene Hoglan, who's a friend of the show, we've had him on. But man, I saw him play for Opeth. I saw him play for Dark Angel. I saw him play for Testament, Anthrax. He can play. I saw him play with Death. It's like he could play any style of metal, and he's kind of like the Joe Satriani of drumming, where he can play
not just that
any style
he
of music.
in, and he's always perfect. He's
Yeah.
the only guy that I hear, like, he plays all the Testament stuff, and you could play the album from 30 years ago back to back with him playing it live, and the fills are exactly like they are on I mean, Dave Lombardo can't do the fills like he did back in the day, but Gene Hoglan can hit them. I mean,
rumor has it that the young teenage Gene Hoglan was actually helping Lombardo figure those things out.
I don't believe that, because Gene Hoglan said, yeah. He may have been involved a little bit, but at the time, I mean, number one, Lombardo's probably the most important. What's up?
I was just pointing at my Gene Hoglan drum head right there.
I would say Lombardo's the most important metal drummer that we've had, period. He just took stuff to the next level. And Gene Hoglan's giving him all the credit. I think Gene Hoglan's a better drummer than Lombardo. But I've got Dave Lombardo above him on my list just because, he kind of created the blueprint that everybody else followed after him,
I agree. I'm looking at some of the names. Mickey D, certainly a steady drummer. Nick Barker, Alex Van Halen, Nico McBrain. I have Cliff Burr. I have Cliff Burr on my list. He's on one of my 5 pages of names here. I actually liked his drum. I just thought his drumming was a little more solid. I saw Mike Portnoy on there, and it's hard to argue how good that guy really is too. And
yeah, he's number 3 on my list, and his stuff is not even his best stuff's not even the Dream Theater stuff. The stuff he did with Flying Colors blew me away. What else? He's been in so many bands. I mean,
in Dead Daisies, was that him?
Did he do that? He might have. I don't know.
Who was with Richie Kotzen and Billy Sheehan? Well, Winery Dogs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You got some drummers. Gary Ireton said Mick Fleetwood, Gil Moore, Albert Bouchard, Blue Oyster Cult, Gavin Harrison, and Mike Portnoy.
Yeah.
Greg D'Angelo. I got a few that haven't been mentioned yet. That I think this guy could play circles. Well, he died, but before he died, he could play circles around most drummer. Was Ted Kirkpatrick
from Deliverance?
No, from Tourniquet.
Oh, Tourniquet, yeah.
He also played in Trouble for a while too.
I didn't know he played in Trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Is he from Chicago too?
I don't know where he was originally from. I know he was living in California for a long time, and then when he died, he was living in Florida. And then it's funny, someone Brett Tate just said the same thing. Ted Kirkpatrick, Nick Menza, and I could show some of these. I forgot about that. But I another one that probably won't get mentioned on here that I know the guy could play circles around most drummers is Jason Sherlock.
Oh yeah, I loved the stuff he did with Mortification and Paramecium was him too, wasn't it?
Yep, Paramecium was him. He also did Horde, among others. And the drumming on Horde is just like it's ridiculous. It's so freaking fast, and there's just so much going on. It almost becomes a parody because it's so crazy. I honestly didn't think it was real drums, but nope, he played everything on there.
He played everything on that album too, didn't he? It wasn't just the drums.
Everything, yep, everything. Vocals, guitars, bass, it's all him.
Do you have that one, John?
No, I don't.
Is that the first Christian black metal album? It's got to be if not the first, one of the first.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but it wasn't. I mean, back then they weren't even calling it that. They were just calling it black metal, and people were getting all those black metal bands from nowhere were getting all mad and threatening to boycott Nuclear Blast because they put the album out, and you
Yeah,
remember all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna sit,
Which is
we're gonna
funny
sit
because they had
Kurt's
put out Mortification before that, you know.
Oh, they did the same thing. They did the same thing with Mortification. There's flyers.
Yeah.
There were flyers floating around for people to boycott Nuclear Blast
That's
because
funny.
they're putting out Mortification.
It's funny you should say that because I was, I don't know. It doesn't, you know what? Genre doesn't really matter anymore. I think it's, it becomes a style or whatever. But you said something about him playing things that were just like it almost was like a color. It became less of a sound and more of like a color or something that a sound you could visualize almost. But I remember at a drum clinic in Houston with Bobby Rock that he would have 24 sound sources and he would include them in a 4-count measure, but he would hit all 24 sound sources, and then he would do a 16th count measure. It was just stuff like that. Like what you're saying, where the sound becomes a color and you don't know how. I mean, I guess it just takes years and years. But I would love to hear "quote unquote" Christian black metal. I know that Rob had given me some CDs of some bands that had some elements of black metal that were alleged Christian ones, but I would like to hear what you're talking about anyway. Somebody also mentioned anybody Cozy Powell.
Yeah,
of course.
How about Dan Beeler from Exciter?
Exciter, yeah, great singer too. I liked his voice. But let me throw another one out there that most people probably won't bring up is Glenn Evans.
Oh, from Nuclear Assault? Yeah.
TT Quick. I always thought he was a fantastic drummer. Actually, we lost a few drummers last year in 2023 too. What's that guy's name? The Bachman Turner Overdrive. Robbie Bachman.
Oh, Robbie
passed away
Bachman
from Bachman Turner Overdrive died last year, and Eric Farrow, E-Rock from TT Quick died last year.
Oh.
I think Ted Kirkpatrick died at the end of 2022, but it wasn't that long ago. So we lost several drummers, and didn't we lose like a Foo Fighters drummer or something like that?
Yeah,
last year.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking it up. Taylor Hawkins.
Hawkins. He was really solid. Not overly flashy, but really spot on. Great syncopated rhythms. I mean, he fit the music. I don't really like the Foo Fighters that much, but they're excellent at what they do, and he was certainly the glue that helped hold that together, I thought.
Yeah.
Wow.
But,
I forgot we lost
Frankie Banali. Quiet Riot.
Yeah, he was always a solid drummer. I've never had a problem with him. He played in other bands too, but that was his main gig.
Papa Wayne's is Chris Whipper Layton from.
Oh yeah, Rob Reiner. That's a great choice. Rob Reiner's a great drummer. Robert Sweet from Striper, he's also a great drummer. I've seen him live many times. He was very good. And then I was just telling you guys about Terry Bozzio. I saw Terry Bozzio do a drum concert. His drum set was ridiculous. I mean,
it's like 116 pieces or something.
It's crazy, but he played them all, man. He was just playing music. He had his different drums tuned so he could actually, play music on them. It was kind of interesting. I'd never seen anything like it before. He was great though. How about another one for you? See if anybody knows who this drummer is. Pete Weber.
Pete Weber from Havoc is a beast.
Yes, he is. I've seen him play twice, and both times my jaw was on the floor watching that dude.
And his diminutive size should not fool anybody. He plays huge, and his feet are some of the fastest in the game. His hands are always spot on. He's an amazing drummer. In fact, I think he was sitting in with Fear Factory on this last tour.
Oh yeah, wasn't Mike Heller in Fear Factory too? The Ravens' new drummer.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he did 1 or 2 albums with them, and then he toured with them. So the 2 I think 1 or 2 of those albums that Gene Hoglan did, he didn't tour with them, and he toured with them instead. He was their touring drummer initially.
He was. I mean, I've seen Raven twice with him, and he's a beast. And then the new albums are right back to the early '80s stuff, where it's just all
Yeah.
about speed. Probably because of him. That's an interesting choice. Someone just brought up. How about Mick Brown?
From Dawkins and Ted Nugent fame.
Yep, sure enough.
I think the
actually have
best I've ever seen Nugent was when he was basically a three-piece with Mick Brown, Nugent, and I can't remember who was playing bass.
Greg
Jeff
Smith.
Tilt? Oh, okay.
Greg
Yeah.
Smith from Rainbow. Yep. I gotta see what else I got over here. Mike Heller, Jimmy DeGrasso. We think we said that.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Just because I was listening to their live album the other day, it came to mind was the drummer from Stuck Mojo, Bud Fontsev. You might know. I was hoping you might know, Steve, since you kind of know that band.
What band is it?
Stuck Mojo.
Stuck Mojo.
Oh yeah, I don't know who their drummer is though.
It's Bud something or other, but he was entertaining. I liked him.
There's an
he
album
wasn't-
I'm thinking of, and it's driving me nuts. I can't find it now.
He played on their popular albums, including that live album. TJ Lewis is online.
Keith Moon.
Yeah, Keith Moon's a good choice. Nobody said that one yet. Derek Roddy, Tim Young, Buddy Rich. We have said Buddy Rich.
So
Joey
a couple
Jordan.
more for me. I had to put Igor Cavalera.
Of course you did. Why not? He's great.
Well, he's not. That's not only one of my all-time favorite bands. That tribal element that he added to his drums, everybody's copied that since then. It's just so good. It was a different sound. It probably led to a lot of the groove metal stuff that came on after that because they went more for that kind of drum sound. Randy Castillo is a 10 out of 10 with Ozzy, and he played. I think he covered with Motley Crue for a while too. But most
he was actually from my home, from here, from New Mexico, and he was like a celebrity around here.
Hey,
Frazier.
Frazier.
Another one for me. I've seen him 3 times in the last 2 years. Mario Duplantier from Gojira.
Oh yeah,
that guy is amazing live. It just blows me away how good that guy is. From the first time I heard him about 15 years ago, I've been hooked, and I've bought everything that they've released within a day or two of it coming out. And then I don't know if has anybody mentioned Danny Carey yet from Tool?
No, but he's quite good too.
Oh my God! There's a video of him playing, I think, Tempest, which is an insane drum track. But there's a video of him behind the overhead watching him play that thing live, and it's one of the coolest videos I've ever seen.
Well, Frazier is tapping into my Gulf Coast music abilities here. Dauber Beverly from Insect Warfare. He's also he and his wife are in a band called Oceans of Slumber, which is completely the opposite of Insect Warfare. You go from 1,000,000 miles an hour to heavy-footed doom. Matt Hafner from Cemetery and Blaspherian. Name a metal band in Houston, and he was part of it. Frank Fairman from PLF and Oath of Cruelty for a short time. Cryptic Void. There's something in the water down there that that's where Bobby Rock's from. He's from Houston area. So yeah, those are all quality. I have him on my list there, Frazier.
Another one just came to my head was Shannon Fry from Avenger of Blood.
Yeah, hard to argue, and I like that remix. That was it. What was that last name?
Version?
Yeah,
nothing
wrong with that. I don't know. I've heard some complaints about it, maybe just from him, but I thought that thing was killer.
Yeah, he was ultimately not happy with it, but I think it sounds great. It sounds better than the original.
Oh yeah, by far. Mike Tirana, I forgot about him. And Mark Fields had mentioned Sean Reinert before from Cynic, and talk about adding the jazz elements to metal. Well, they were kind of like some of the purveyors that early, like the Confessor, Cynic, Atheist, some of the all and well, I guess while we're on that note, Max Klebanoff from Tomb Mold has reintroduced jazz to death metal with their latest record.
I had it behind me somewhere.
Yeah,
The Avenged Blood.
that thing is killer, man.
Yeah, completely re-annihilated.
Yep.
Another one I got to give credit to, even though I'm not a huge fan of the band, he's one of the best drummers I've seen live. Is the Rev? Is it the Rev from Avenged Sevenfold? I believe it's the Rev. A lot better drummer than what the band actually is, but
yeah.
I've got a place with them.
Hey, this is kind of a controversial one. Heavy Metal Basement said Lars Ulrich. What do you think? People love to put him down, but
I think he's okay. I don't think he's a great drummer. I think he's a good drummer.
I think he killed himself. He's the reason he's not on people's top 10 lists. You know, if you look at his stuff from the 80s, it's fantastic. It's not as good as Lombardo or Bostaph or a couple of the other drummers from that era. Benante, they're all better drummers than him. He had some iconic drums though, especially with songs like One. But then later on, once it started with in the mid 90s, once they went the blues rock route, and then was it Saint Anger? Saint Anger's got one of the worst drum sounds I've ever heard in my life on record.
Yep.
It's so bad. And his kick drums are inconsistent. You especially heard it in that album, but when you hear him live, there'll be random kick drums. It just, you don't know where they came from. They're out of place. And I don't know what it is if you know.
I thought he to me, he's like the Peter Criss of thrash a little bit. His first couple albums are iconic and great, and he fit the music just fine. And then, like you said, he sort of shot himself in the foot, literally and figuratively, with his, whether it's his personality or his commentary, or he just didn't get any better. He's good. I mean, if you play every day,
there were rumors that they were saying that Cliff and
James
and James, they wanted to kick him out of the band. He was about to be gone, and they say had Cliff not died, he would have been kicked out of the band. But because of the death, talks of that stopped. So he said for years it wasn't true, but it's come out from people in the know that it was true. He was on his way out. So
yeah, funny how fate works.
Yeah.
Anybody? Ringo?
Damien Hair Metal said Bunny Carlos. I think that's a good choice. Ringo, I mean, he's iconic, but he wasn't a great drummer. And he didn't even play on all the. He like Peter Criss struggled in the studio, and yeah, I don't know. He's definitely iconic, though.
Yeah. Lee Krasalski from Uriah Heep and Ozzy. Blas Elias, there's a good one.
There's another good one coming up right now. Lee Kurzak.
Another.
Uriah Heep and Ozzy, who got the short end of the stick from the Blizzard of Oz.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Of course, he wasn't the only one.
Filthy Phil Taylor. Filthy
that's
Animal.
If I didn't say it, it's on my list. Yeah, he was. I mean, here's another one. 1978, an Overkill. The song Overkill with that steady.
Yeah, I think that's where it really took off, the whole double bass thing. Not that it wasn't happening before, but
yeah.
How about
Thin Lizzy was doing that double bass thing before that, but there was just something about that song Overkill that really influenced the whole thrash metal movement.
Yeah. How about
has anybody mentioned Tom Hunting?
I have him on my list right here.
Okay, yeah. He never gets talked about when people talk about especially the classic thrash drummers. I mean, it doesn't get much more classic than Exodus, and
right. He's another lefty too. It's weird to watch him play because you're just like, what is he doing back there? And then you realize he's playing opposite hand.
I personally think that's the dumbest thing. I don't understand why some left-handed drummers swap the drum kit around, because you don't have, if you're a good drummer, you don't have a lead hand. You know what I mean? You learn to do all four of your two hands and your 2 feet. You learn to do that independently. So I've never understood, and it's most left-handed drummers don't. Their kit's the same as right-handed guys. There's just some here and there, and it's I just always
or they have a second hi-hat set up on the right instead of the left. But anyway,
Yeah, Phil
Some-
Taylor was great. Headbanging Zulu.
Oh man, Mark Fields is pulling them out of the stack there with Dean Castronova and Atmar Anur, both great.
And I'm trying to just keep up with the comments here.
Dennis Chambers, I could throw him in there. How about let's see,
Steve Zimmerman from Fate's Warning.
yeah, I had Mick Harris and Ken Owen. Mick Harris from Napalm Death, Danny Herrera, who took his place, Ken Owen
Rick-
from Carcass,
Rick Allen.
from
Def Leppard.
Def Leppard.
Have we
I don't
mentioned
know.
Sean Reinhart yet?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And Mark had mentioned him earlier. Mark Fields. How about Rat Skates?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Huge kit, and that on the early Overkill stuff. I've got some random Perry Strickland from Violence.
Yeah.
A lot
A lot of those thrash metal was, you had to be a good drummer to play thrash. It's just all there is to it. I mean, I know for a fact when Ultimatum was recording in the studio, one of our drummers just struggled so much in the studio, and then we brought in another drummer, and man, he just like nailed it like that. I mean, just because you can play live, it doesn't mean you can play in the studio.
Yeah.
But thrash is a very precise. I mean, you got to hit every time, and it's not easy.
Anybody heard of Nils Feldstrom?
Yep.
From Dark Funeral, another left-hander, and man, that dude's amazing.
All right, before you say another one, someone say what. Look at the one on the screen, which we've said already, but someone say the name.
Neil Peart.
Neil Peart.
Peart. My whole life I've called him Neil Peart, but
I'll call him both. I'll pronounce it both ways in one sentence.
Hey, Louis Clemente.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
Another good one is Danny Herrera from Napalm Death.
Got him on my list.
And here's one.
Ken
Charlie
Owen
Benante from
from
Anthrax.
Carcass.
I know we talked about Charlie Benante, but I really think he's one of the most underrated drummers, especially at the Big Four, because that dude can play anything.
Oh yeah,
he's a beast. I mean, look at his stuff with SOD. He's playing with Pantera now. He's played lots of other bands.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that song "Charlie Don't Cheat"? It's just like full of all these crazy blast beats, and it's all him doing it. There's no, fake drumming in there.
No, I think Benante's.
He can play. I mean, people forget how fast some of those Anthrax songs are too. Caught in the Mosh was one of the hardest songs for me to learn how to play.
Yeah.
It's so fast on drums, and he plays it like it's nothing.
Johnny Kelly lives here in town, and he is. I took me a while to come around on Typo Negative, but I finally understand their brilliance.
I loved the first two albums when they came out, and then I kind of lost interest. And now that I've gone back, I've got the box set, and then I just recently bought their final album when they repressed it last year. Man, they didn't have a bad song. I mean,
No.
They were just such a great band. And Peter Steele was just one of those. I mean, not just the Typo Negative stuff, the Carnivore stuff is amazing too.
Yeah.
Is it on your list, or did anybody say, I didn't hear it, but did anybody say Ian Pace?
No. That was on my very first list.
Oh, did you say it and I just missed it?
Yeah, Ian Pace. I have him up there with Buddy Rich, Lenny White, Mitch Mitchell, Ian Pace, John Bonham, Bill Ward, Gene Hoglan, Dave Lombardo. That was
because I mean, just listen to the song "Burn" and try and play that on your drum.
Yeah,
the snare work on that is incredibly fast.
Chuck Biscuit, somebody mentioned that one too, man. DOA, Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Danzig. I mean, Sam Hain, Social Distortion. I mean, that guy has played for so many bands, and he's always been fantastic. I got to see him live with Danzig a couple times, and I mean, that whole lineup, that era with John Christ on guitar and him on drums was that stuff was amazing.
Okay, if you're referring to the Innovator from, are they from Sweden or Denmark? Dude, that drummer is he's a powerhouse.
I'm looking him up right now because I don't know.
Yeah, Innovator. They just repackaged their first and second records. and they're both they're like super experimental, but just, I mean, like fifth gear thrash metal. It's really great. Heavy
Yeah,
Metal
okay.
Basement, Richie Morales from Spyro Gyra. Man, see, he's a man after my own heart there. I love, and to your point, Steve-O, a lot of the metal stuff comes from the jazz influence.
Yeah.
The same time signatures, just maybe speed it up a little, but maybe not. I mean, like that Cobham stuff, that early Cobham stuff is pretty much heavy metal with a different sounding guitar and bass pattern, but the drumming itself is awfully metal. Yeah, I think they're from Denmark. Innovator, check them out. They're brutal.
And I can't think of his name off the top of my head. The drummer from Immortal.
Horde.
Thank you. Oh, the first time I heard that guy,
dude, that guy is
so fucking fast, and it sounds amazing.
Yeah,
that guy blew me away.
And the kit he plays, he's got 224s. He's got a massive kit,
insane.
And he hits that thing. He hits that thing as hard as Henry Vasquez or John Bonham style, and he's super precise. Yeah, I have, and he's on my list. I have him with with Nils. I even included Charlie Belmore's brother, Nicky. That guy that played in Toxic Holocaust. I think that was, to me, that was my favorite Toxic Holocaust lineup was the two Belmore brothers and then Joel on bass. And you, Scott, you said it. I mean, in order to be a killer thrash band, you've got to have a killer drummer, period. And he certainly didn't disappoint.
I know somebody mentioned Vinnie Paul. Vinnie Paul was super technical too. It was hard to learn his stuff, but also to play like he played. He was the first guy I saw that used solid drumsticks, really thick, solid drumsticks. They didn't have a little tip on the end. It was just a long ass stick, and he beat the shit out of those drums. He had like 3 pads on each of his drums to keep them from breaking. I mean, it was insane how hard that guy played. I'm sure the alcohol had something to do with it, but
yeah, you think?
But it's funny when you look at the drum, because speaking of, I mean, we mentioned especially Danny Carey from Tool and Gene Hoglan. The way they play is different than every other metal drummer I've ever seen. They've both figured out the least amount of movement that you have to do to play your drums. Like when you watch Gene Hoglan play, he's not going crazy. He barely moves, and he's so fast. And Danny Carey does the same thing. He's got all of his drums set up in real weird positions, but he does it
flat
to minimize movement, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the classic guys, Nick Menza was all over the place, you know? And Neil Peart had cymbals and drums going all the way around, and he'd be spinning halfway around, and it's insane the difference in playing styles too.
That's funny that you mentioned that too, because when the Cavalera brothers were here doing Morbid Visions and Bestial, whatever, Igor broke out the rototoms to where they were up so high he had to stand up to hit them. But what a classic! That's sort of a Brazilian thing, or I remember what was it? Necrodeath from Italy used to play the rototoms like that.
I remember I think Neil Peart was the one that really made people want to mess with the rototoms, because I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, everybody was getting a set of them and putting them off a little raised up a little bit in their on their kits, and then they went to smaller drums too that kind of sounded like the rototoms,
right?
And but yeah. There were a couple drummers though, and Danny Carey. What's interesting about him is he mixes traditional drums and drum pads, and he's got the real high-end drum pads where, depending on where you hit inside the drum pad, it's a different sound. So I mean, it's insane.
Mark Fields, Phil Earhart from Kansas, man, bringing it with both barrels. Nigel Glockler, we should have thought he's a friend of the show too. Solid guy. Stuart Copeland, another heavy player, but very super precise.
Nobody said Ginger Baker. I was kind of surprised.
You know, Man, when I think of that early 70s stuff or late 60s stuff, I go right to Mitch Mitchell right away. But I mean, Ginger Breaker, it's hard to argue.
I mean, that's all the
I mean-
same scene, though. They were
Yeah.
all playing that same scene in the UK. Same with Cozy Powell and a couple of those other guys from that late '60s to early '70s blues era.
Herman Rarebell.
Oh yeah, Herman the German from the Scorpions.
Oh yeah. Another one is oh my god. Give
I
me a
got
minute.
Gary Gaskell.
Who was
From
the one
King
on? I can't
and
remember the
Howard
guy's name on Lonesome Crow for the Scorpions. He was he and Lothar were the straight up. They were straight up jazz players.
Did we mention Terry Bozzio?
A
Yep,
couple times,
did.
yeah.
And then what about I can't remember how to say his last name. Vinny from Zappa. He's the one that Terry took over for. Is it Caloza?
Vinny Caliuta.
Thank you. I can never say his last name.
He's amazing too.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, he played for Zappa. Anybody that plays for you can't play for Zappa unless you're an amazing.
Oh no, yeah,
yeah.
obviously not. No, Caliuta played for. He played in Megadeth for a spell. He did.
Did he really?
He did some studio. I think he did. What's the one with the with Head Crusher on it?
Head Crusher.
Anyway, Caliuta, played on two Megadeth records. But Vinny Appice, Kim.
I've always thought both Appice brothers. I like them both. I think they're both way overrated, though.
I agree.
They just have the personalities. I mean, playing the stuff with Ozzy was cool, but then like you go and listen to the King Cobra. That's not great drumming. It's okay.
It's good timekeeping, but it's not great drumming.
What's the late '60s band? I can't remember which one played in it.
Vanilla Fudge.
Vanilla Fudge is good drumming. It doesn't compare to what was going on in the UK at the same time, though.
The System Has Failed. That was the other Megadeth record that Caliuta played on.
Oh wow, I love that out. I think that's one of their most underrated albums.
Go back and listen to the drums now that you know who's playing it.
Yeah, I didn't know. I love that. Oh no, I love that. That's one of my favorite. That's probably in my top 5 favorite Megadeth albums. It's super underrated. That's a great album. What happened with them though is they put out that what was the real shitty album that they put out? Risk, yeah. They put out Risk and they kind of lost everybody,
Right.
They came back with World Needs a Hero, but people didn't really grasp onto it. Then The System Has Failed is when really people. Oh man, Mike Borland. I don't know how I forgot him. That's another great one.
What band's he from?
He was in The Real Thing. The album's The Real Thing. What's the band? With Mike Patton.
Oh, Faith No More.
Yeah, Faith No More. Is that Mike Borland?
Jerry Shirley, Papa Wayne.
Jerry Shirley played in besides Fastway. Who else did he play with? Yeah, this Phil Taylor. He says Phil Taylor created an entire genre of drumming. Yep, we did. We talked about that a little earlier about 1978 and the song Overkill with that steady double bass, and everybody wanted to do it after that. Anyhow, Humble Pie.
So anyway, Mike Gordon played.
Yep.
He played with Ozzy for a long time after Randy Castillo died, though. He was
Jerry Shirley?
No, Mike Borden.
Oh, Mike Borland?
Borden, not Borland.
Borden?
Yeah. He was in Faith No More, and then he went to Ozzy after Randy died.
Happened to have the film
that's a great one
right here. I'm assuming he's on this one. Don't have enough light in here. I can't see the little type.
Damien, Meg White was an okay drummer. People put her on their list as like this super drummer. I feel the same way about. We just said, what was the guy from the Foo Fighters that died?
Taylor Hawkins.
everybody talked about how amazing he was. He was a good drummer. When you compare him to some of these other guys, though, he wasn't great. Another one is the guy from Blink 182. God, I think that
Travis
guy sucks. I don't know why
Travis
people love that
Barker.
guy so much. He's a decent punk driver or punk drummer, but guys like Chuck Biscuits would play circles around him. There's so many better punk drummers out there than him.
I don't disagree with that. I think he's overrated too, but he's in one of the biggest pop punk bands in history. So
Don't get me. I liked the first few Blink 182 albums. Once that one, it's funny, right? When they're what was the one with Janine on the cover? Whatever album that was, the porn star Janine.
Yeah, me. I don't know anything about that band.
Enema of the State. It's like their biggest album. I bought that and I was like, oh, this is so bad. And I gave it away to a friend, and that ended up being the album that blew up and made them like a household name.
yeah,
But yeah.
I never got into those guys or Green Day or a lot of those kind of crossover pop pumpkins,
Yeah.
pop punk bands. For me, the Ramones were kind of like the epitome of punk. Sex Pistols.
there's you remember Devastation, don't you?
Mhm.
They had a drummer named Louis Carasalis that was just he started. In fact, he was on the first. It was a Death Tripper album that we unearthed when we were doing the Texas Metal Archives, and even at 13 years old, the dude was kind of like the guy from Death Angel. He was 13 when they recorded the first demos.
Yeah.
What is his name? Doggone it. Andy Gallion. He's a beast too. And is he still playing? Well, no, he's not, because the last time I saw them, they had Gene Hoglan was playing for him. It wasn't Andy Gallion. But man, that first Death Angel, the full length, I love that album. And then they got kind of weirdly syncopated on the Frolic in the Park, and then I Love Act 3. I mean, for as much as Death Angel didn't do early on, that I still think that they were leaps and bounds above the rest, part of that Bay Area thrash thing.
Another one that nobody's mentioned is Tim Alexander. He was a drummer for Primus. Man, that guy.
But he was also
Les Claypool gets all the credit. He was just as good on drums as Les Claypool is on bass, and he's another guy. He had to have like a 300-piece drum set. I mean, it's insane how big.
Did you hear him in Blind Illusion? Because wasn't he in Blind Illusion with Les Claypool?
He may have been. I'm not sure. I have that album, but it's warped, so I've never played it.
Yeah,
but man, I've seen him live like 5 or 6 times with Primus, and I saw him with a Perfect Circle and a couple of other bands. That guy blows me away every time I see him. He's
fantastic. In fact, I was going to say one of our local Bruce Corbett's stepson, Lyric, used to play in War Beast, and he is a Primus aficionado, and so everything I've gotten a heavy dose of the whole band, but the drumming is just, I think when you're in a 3-piece, there's just no place to hide. You got to all be good. So,
well, not just that, you're in a 3-piece with probably one of the top 3 best bass players of all time.
Right?
Yeah, it's amazing how good that guy was.
Ooh, here's one I forgot. Rod Morgenstein,
from
Winger, played in Winger, but he was in Dixie Dregs and who else?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him.
Dixie Dregs with Steve Morse.
Yeah. I'm just not familiar with the drummer.
Oh, Rod Morgenstein. Yeah, check it out. Yeah. Check out those. I don't know how he ended up in Winger. I guess he was looking for a paycheck, but yeah, his drumming. He's more of a straightforward drummer in Winger, and I'm sure he made a lot of money. But his stuff with Dixie Dregs is just phenomenal.
What about Mr. Smile from Halloween? Ingo.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about him before, but man, especially those first few, where actually those first couple Halloween albums where they're almost thrash albums,
like Walls of Jericho.
Oh my God, he was fantastic on there. Even Keeper of the Seven Keys, but especially especially that one. Gar
Dr.
Samuelson.
Yeah, someone mentioned him earlier on. The guy that took over for Ken Owen, Daniel Wilding. He was in a grindcore band, and but he fit Carcass to a T. Daniel Erlinson, who's also an arch enemy.
Oh, Max Roach is a good one too. I don't think anybody mentioned him.
That's old school right there.
Actually, I have some Max Roach back here behind me.
How about Dr. Killdrums?
You got me.
Steve Watchels from, or however you say his last name, from Savatage.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Killdrum.
What was the? Oh my God, what's his name? What's the drummer from? Oh, it's gonna drive me nuts. Wore the mask. New wave of British heavy metal.
Yeah. Samson.
Wacko.
From Samson.
Yeah, what's his name?
Hang on, I'll look it up.
What about Wacko from Raven?
He was a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sadly, he was the reason their music got slower, though. He couldn't play fast like that after a while, especially once his health started going down.
Wacko?
Was it Mr. Sticks or something?
Yeah, I can't remember. Dr. Thunderstick.
Thank you.
That's it.
Oh,
Thunderstick. Yep. Well, yeah,
All right,
we're
guys, it's
right
after
an hour.
7.
So, you guys have anything else you want to add before we get going?
I didn't think we were
do this
gonna.
all night long.
Nice Rush jacket, by the way.
Yeah, that was their Clockwork Orange last tour, and they
There's
just
some of
happened to have my size. So,
I don't think it was Clockwork Orange.
or I mean a
Clockwork Angels.
Clockwork Angel. Sorry, having a Kubrick moment there.
Well, right on. You
Anyway.
want to go ahead and end the show there? And while you're doing that, I'm going to figure out how to get this thing to go off correctly this time, so we don't sit there and look at each other all stupid.
And we can. Well, that's part of the charm of the show, I would guess. But I appreciate all the folks that have chimed in. Man, there's a whole bunch of stuff. People, and that's the problem with something like this, especially if you play drums, which I did. My first original teacher when I was 13, Jim Dinkins, would probably have a big smile on his face that we're talking drums today. But rest in peace there, Jim.
Yeah, somebody just mentioned Josh Freese. That was another good one. Isn't he play? Did he just replace Taylor Hawkins? Is he the new Foo Fighters drummer?
Oh, yeah, he may have.
But yeah, he was in, man, he's been in a bunch of bands going back to the early 80s.
And Tony Clem, Joey Gonzalez of Warbeast, of course.
Absolutely.
Anyway, hey, thanks,
Well, right
Bob
on.
Wayne.
You all know how we do this at the very, very end of the show. Metal.
Metal will prevail.
Wait. I'm bringing it back. I heard that somebody might have an announcement to make.
Excuse me?
I heard that somebody might have a big announcement to make.
Oh, I think it's all over the internet now.
Yeah, but I don't think everybody here knows.
Oh, I'm getting married in July.
Nice, congratulations!
And we're gonna have two ceremonies. A more traditional ceremony in Utah. My parents don't travel very well at nearly 87 years old, and I have a close friend who I'd like to have him participate, but he's got MS and is wheelchair bound, so it'll make it easier for him to get there. And then we're going to come back to Texas and rock and roll all night and party every day.
Have a big party, huh? Right on.
Yep.
Well,
So,
congratulations.
yeah, thanks. Steph and I are very happy, and
I don't know what you're thinking, but congratulations.
yeah.
Right on.
Anyway,
Go back.
Yep. See ya.